The internet found something in Justin Gaethje's gloves. Or at least it thought it did. A photo posted by an account called Chicken King MMA showed what appeared to be extra padding in the gloves Gaethje wore at UFC Freedom 250, and within 11 hours the post had nearly 3 million views and 4,000 likes. Social media went into full conspiracy mode. Fans were comparing it to the Antonio Margarito loaded gloves situation. People were asking why Ilia Topuria's eye damage was so severe, why a suspected broken orbital bone could result from a fight with a man who is not primarily known as a one-punch knockout artist. And the theory spread the way internet theories always spread, faster than the evidence that contradicts it. Here is the evidence that contradicts it. Topuria's own team was present during the pre-fight glove inspection. That is standard UFC procedure. A representative from the opposing camp has the right to observe both the hand-wrapping process and the glove fitting before the fighters leave their locker rooms. If something was wrong with Gaethje's gloves, Topuria's corner had the opportunity to flag it before the fight ever started. And Ilia Topuria, in his first public statement after the loss, congratulated Gaethje directly and made zero mention of anything illegal. A man with a suspected broken orbital bone, who spent the night in a hospital, who is facing months of recovery, that man chose not to use illegality as an explanation. That choice tells you more than the conspiracy theory does. The actual explanation for the eye damage is simpler and more uncomfortable for Topuria's supporters. Gaethje's jab found that eye repeatedly across 4 rounds. The first significant damage came in round 1 when Gaethje landed a good left hook and clean jabs that started closing the right eye before the round ended. By the time the corner stoppage came after the 4th, both eyes were shut, Topuria's nose was destroyed, and he was clutching his ribs from the knee Gaethje landed in the final seconds before the bell. The orbital fracture, confirmed as a small fracture that will not require surgery, is the cumulative result of 4 rounds of precise, sustained facial damage from a man who hits harder than almost anyone who has ever competed in this division. Khabib Nurmagomedov said nobody hit him harder than Justin Gaethje. The physics of what Gaethje's punches do to a face over 4 rounds is the explanation. No conspiracy required. The corner stoppage itself is the element that has generated the most debate, and the technical details of what happened between the 4th and 5th rounds deserve careful examination. Topuria collapsed on the stool. His corner swarmed him. His left eye was completely closed with a large dark purple hematoma forming around it. His ribs were causing him enough pain that he could not take a deep breath properly. His brother Alexander looked at the damage, looked at the referee, and said it was over. Daniel Cormier praised referee Marc Goddard for an earlier intervention that had already been controversial, the moment between rounds 3 and 4 when the ringside doctor appeared to want to stop the fight and Goddard overruled the doctor and allowed both men to continue because both men wanted to fight. Cormier called the doctor inexperienced and said Goddard made the right call, that the fight needed to continue because both competitors wanted it to. What followed was a 4th round in which Topuria, fighting with one eye and damaged ribs, showed genuine heart and competitive spirit. The corner stoppage was not because Topuria gave up in the moment, it was because the people responsible for his long-term well-being made the assessment that sending him out against a fresh and dominant opponent for a 5th round with those injuries was not acceptable. Arman Tsarukyan's behavior in the post-fight period has now generated its own controversy, and it comes from an unexpected direction. He has been mocking Topuria on social media, including the tweet about Topuria's medical bills that generated significant backlash. But there is now a video circulating of a fighter, whose identity has not been fully verified in the coverage, delivering a direct message to Tsarukyan, saying that he used to respect him but that the medical bills tweet crossed a line. The message argues that Tsarukyan's social media behavior, particularly his association with what the speaker describes as becoming a celebrity rather than a fighter, has diminished him. The speaker notes that Topuria has 17 million followers because he earned them as a real fighter and a real human being, while Tsarukyan's follower growth, which the speaker attributes to his association with a social media personality, is borrowed credibility. The message closes with a warning about karma. Whether this represents meaningful blowback for Tsarukyan or just one fighter's opinion, it speaks to the way Tsarukyan's post-fight conduct is landing with people who had previously respected him. In his calmer moments, Tsarukyan has been more measured. On the Ariel Helwani show, when asked directly about Topuria, Tsarukyan called him a warrior. He acknowledged that Topuria's decision to fight until the corner stopped it was the decision of a man who refused to give up even when the damage was severe. That is a different register than the medical bills tweet, and it suggests that Tsarukyan's actual respect for Topuria as a competitor is more complex than his social media presence would indicate. Paddy Pimblett's contribution to the post-fight analysis is worth including, not for the mockery, which was predictable and about which there is little new to say, but for the analytical observation he made that has been underreported. Pimblett called Gaethje the ultimate spoiler. He ruined the Khabib versus Tony Ferguson fight by stepping in and losing to Khabib. He ruined a potential Pimblett versus Topuria fight by winning the interim title. And now, by beating Topuria on the White House lawn, he has potentially ruined the Islam Makhachev versus Topuria super fight that was building toward being one of the most anticipated bouts in recent memory. Pimblett is framing it as destruction of narratives, but the underlying observation is accurate. Gaethje has an extraordinary history of inserting himself into the biggest possible moments and either producing the most dramatic possible fight or, in this case, winning it outright. Herb Dean, or more specifically, the referee who worked this fight, released a video explaining the rules around back-of-the-head shots, which is itself an acknowledgement that the controversy from the Gain versus Pereira fight had reached a level that required institutional response. The explanation was technical. The rule covers the nape of the neck and a specific corridor 1 inch to either side, and shots landing even slightly to the side of that corridor are considered fair. The video was clearly an attempt to clarify rather than apologize, but the fact that it was necessary, the fact that the referee in that fight felt the need to explain publicly what he was enforcing, confirms that the back-of-the-head shot controversy has not gone away and is not going to go away without a more robust enforcement mechanism being applied in future fights. Conor McGregor's reaction to Topuria's loss, which included saying he knew it was going to happen and pointing to Topuria's flat-footedness and hands-down guard as structural vulnerabilities, has a specific irony given the circumstances. McGregor himself has lost fights. McGregor himself has had those same vulnerabilities exploited by opponents who found the timing to land cleanly. His assessment that Topuria is not a fully complete fighter and that his face will need significant time to heal, both of which are accurate, lands differently when coming from a man who is about to walk into his own comeback fight against Max Holloway in 3 weeks. The implication is that McGregor sees himself as the fully complete version of the kind of fighter Topuria is trying to be. Whether the cage agrees with that self-assessment is a question that July 11th will answer. Sergio Ramos, the soccer legend, reached out publicly to Topuria with a message of support that deserves documentation because it reveals the scope of the cultural reach Topuria has built during his championship run. Ramos is one of the most decorated footballers in history, a multiple Champions League winner and World Cup champion. His message, addressing Topuria as water, as something that adapts and returns, was framed in terms that speak to genuine personal regard rather than publicity. "Those who celebrate your defeat don't know what awaits them," he wrote. That is not a sponsorship post. That is a message from one competitor to another who understands what losing after a dominant run actually feels like. The medical update on Topuria is the most practically important piece of information coming out of the post-fight period. The orbital fracture is confirmed, but it is small and will not require surgery. He will be out of action for the rest of the year at minimum. This means the earliest realistic return for Topuria is the opening months of 2026, and any fight before then should not be expected. The psychological timeline, processing the first loss of a professional career that had been defined entirely by winning, on the biggest stage the sport has ever produced, in front of 1 billion viewers, is harder to predict than the medical one. But the available evidence suggests Topuria's character is built for this. His public statement was not the statement of a man who is broken. It was the statement of a man who knows what he is and knows what he is going to do about it. The fight itself, in retrospect, was decided by a tactical error in the first minute of the first round. Topuria walked forward without feints. He did not use the jab to set up his entries. He came in a straight line at a man with meaningfully longer reach, better range management, and a jab that was specifically designed and drilled to land in the pocket that approach creates. Demetrius Johnson said Topuria did not respect Gaethje's power or his durability. The first round film bears that out. A champion who had been told, by everyone in his camp, by every analyst, by the fighter himself, that Gaethje was going to come forward and absorb damage to find the finish, walked into the cage and walked forward in a straight line without feints as if the information he had been given did not apply to him. Gaethje made him pay for that disrespect with every jab that landed on a chin that was not where it needed to be to avoid them. The post-fight conversation has now turned to what both Topuria and Pereira do next. They lost on the same night. They are reportedly close personally. The shared experience of losing on the biggest stage in the sport's history, together in the same card, is an unusual form of competitive kinship that may produce something significant when both men return. Pereira's path back is defined by the Gain controversy and the question of whether he returns to heavyweight or drops back to 205 where his physical advantages are restored. Topuria's path back is defined by the Tsarukyan fight that was always supposed to happen before Gaethje's upset changed the order of things. Whether those paths converge into something spectacular, a card where both Topuria and Pereira fight in the same night, both trying to reclaim the titles they lost, is the kind of narrative the sport is already building toward without anyone having said so explicitly. For now, the champion is Justin Gaethje. The sport has never seen anything quite like what just happened on that lawn. And somewhere, a fighter with a broken orbital bone and a story that is far from over is already thinking about what comes next.